If you say the name Jigen to most Naruto and Sasuke fans, they get PTSD from episode 204 Boruto, where Jigen almost committed murder due to how easily he beat Naruto and Sasuke. In the eyes of a lot of fans, it's just one of several foul things that Jigen did during the time he was in Boruto that he should have been considered somebody up for crimes against Naruto fans. However, just how long would Jigen go to jail if he were made to stand trial? Well, join me in today's newest installment of the Naruto True Crime series over here on the Naruto Explained channel, where we take a look at every crime that Naruto characters carried out and what their prison sentence would be if they were made to stand trial in Japanese court of law, which obviously means we'll be using the Japanese legal system to determine the sentences, as well as when it comes to other matters of the death penalty, we'll be using the average lifespan of a Japanese male, which is 81 years old, for the determined prison sentence in those cases. Obviously, if you want to see me do the same for other Naruto characters, leave a suggestion down below, and if I like it enough, I'll turn it into a video. And if you want to see me do the same for other anime characters, check out my Anime Explained channel. For Jigen, we'll only be using what we know he did in Boruto's manga, so nothing that wasn't shown prior to Boruto, either in the form of a flashback or directly stated in one of the databases that are in the manga, which a lot of the database information was never animated, so it will be new to you guys. Finally, we'll only be using Jigen and not Ishiki, even though Ishiki was controlling his body. So if we were to apply the Japanese legal system to Jigen's crimes, he would likely receive a severe prison sentence, several life sentences, and several death penalties depending on how his crimes are categorized. What we're going to do now is just start breaking down all of it. So first, you have organized crime and racketeering, so the Yakuza laws. This is going to be 5 years per offense. Japan has strict laws against organized crime under the Act of Punishment of Organized Crimes and Controlled Crime Proceeds. Running an international criminal syndicate of multiple subgroups, such as the outers that we have in the car organization, people like Al, the shell companies that Victor had in the Land of Valleys. It would be considered a serious offense under these laws. The likely sentence would be 5 to 10 years per major organized crime charge, but this would compound with the other crimes. Then when you get into drug trafficking and distribution, that will be 10 years to life. Drug offenses in Japan, they're taken very seriously. Jigen's organization was involved with large-scale drug trafficking, according to what we're told in the Boruto databases and the physical copies of the manga, and this would mean he would face severe penalties. Large-scale distribution of drugs could result in life imprisonment, especially if deaths are a result of these drugs. So the likely sentence would be 10 years to life per major offense. Then you get into human experimentation and murder. This is the death penalty or life imprisonment. Performing experiments on humans is a violation of multiple laws, including murder, human trafficking, and abuse. If these experiments resulted in death, which we know it did, Jigen would be charged with murder, which is punishable by life imprisonment or the death penalty under Article 199 of the Japanese Penal Code. The likely sentence is, since multiple deaths occurred, it'll be life imprisonment or the death penalty. Now, the conspiracy to overthrow the government is another thing that you would not know if you only watch the anime. This is in the physical copies of the Boruto manga. So this would be 5 years to life. Attempting to overthrow the government falls under treason and acts of terrorism, which is punishable as a treasonous act, such as infiltrating the government and attempting coup d'etats, like we saw in Boruto's anime when the outer members were trying that coup d'etat, pulling the strings behind what happened in the Hidden Stone Village. This would result in life imprisonment, so a likely sentence would be 5 to 20 years per major act of sedition or treason, which again would be life in prison given the number of times this happened. Also, you have corruption and government infiltration. This would be another 5 to 10 years per offense. Infiltrating the feudal lord of the Land of Fire's administration, which we know happens via the database and the physical copies of the manga, that would be considered bribery, corruption, and espionage, all of which are criminal offenses under Japanese law. Then you have child trafficking, which is kidnapping and human trafficking. This would be 10 plus years per child. So the crime in general will be basically Jigen and Kara, they adopted 15 children for the purposes of child experimentation. The relevant Japanese laws would be Article 225 of the Penal Code, kidnapping for profit or other gain, which is up to 10 years of imprisonment per offense. Article 2 of the Act of Punishment and activities relating to a child prostitution, child pornography, and the protection of children. Severe penalties for trafficking minors for illicit purposes, including getting up to life imprisonment. Article 3 of the Human Trafficking Law, which would be 15 years per count of trafficking of a minor. So the likely sentence would be 15 confirmed cases, since we know that he had 15 children he experimented on. The minimum penalty would be 150 years, which would be 10 per child, to life imprisonment if the sentences are stacked. However, given the organized nature of the crime, the courts may impose life imprisonment without parole. Then when you get to human experimentation, that's more life imprisonment. The crime would be performing experiments on a child. It is highly illegal, and it is considered to be a human rights violation both under Japanese law as well as international law. The relevant Japanese laws would be Article 218 of the Penal Code, which is abuse leading to injury or death, which is up to 15 years in jail if the abuse leads to death. Medical Practitioners Act, which is Articles 17 and 31, there are strict penalties for unauthorized human experimentation, though it is rarely applied in criminal cases. You also have torture and cruelty laws, which could be invoked to extend the sentencing. So the likely sentence here is going to be life imprisonment and also brought forward for international charges. Then you have the murder of 13 children. This would be the death penalty. So the experiments that resulted in the death of 13 children when he tried to pass on the coma seal, the relevant Japanese law will be Article 199 of the Penal Code, which is murder, which is punishable by death or life imprisonment. Article 204 of the Penal Code, which is injury resulting in death, which is up to 20 years per child in this case. The likely sentence in Japan would likely be the death penalty. When you add in Jigen's abuse of Kawaki under the Japanese legal system, his charges will become even more severe, reinforcing another likelihood of a death penalty due to the extreme cruelty and the systematic nature of the abuse. So those charges would be child abuse and domestic violence, which is 10 plus years per offense. Jigen physically and emotionally abused Kawaki for several years, nearly beating him to death during his training, since Jigen was Kawaki's legal guardian. This would fall under child abuse laws. The relevant Japanese laws would be Child Abuse Prevention Act, Article 2. It covers physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. Penal Code, Article 218, abuse leading to injury, which is up to 15 years in prison if the abuse results in severe injury. Penal Code, Article 204, injury resulting in death or severe harm, up to 20 years per offense if the beatings were severe enough to endanger the life. Criminal Code on assault and battery, which is Article 208, up to 2 years per offense, but if it's systematic, then the penalties would be compounding. Then when you get into the psychological torture, in particular the animal cruelty and the mental abuse, that's another 5+ years. So the crime in question is when Jigen killed Kawaki's pet goldfish in front of him with the intention of punishing him and breaking his spirit. The relevant Japanese law would be the Act of Welfare and Management of Animals, which is basically the Animal Cruelty Act, which is Article 44. It is illegal to kill animals cruelly with a maximum of 5-year prison sentence. The Penal Code for Article 222, which is criminal threats and coercion. This covers psychological torment meant to force compliance, which is another 5 years. The likely sentence here will be 5 years for animal cruelty and 5 years for psychological torture. Then when you add in Jigen's conspiracy to kidnap Boruto and Kawaki, his plan to kill Boruto, his possession of a Ten Tails, which is a weapon of mass destruction, which is the equivalent of a nuclear weapon under the Japanese legal system, his charges, they get even more extremes. These additional charges would further guarantee the death penalty or multiple life sentences. So the conspiracy to kidnap Boruto and Kawaki, that is 10 years per child. The crime is that Jigen conspired to kidnap both Kawaki and Boruto, intending to use them for his personal goals. The relevant Japanese laws would be Penal Code Article 224, the kidnapping of a minor, which is up to 7 years imprisonment per victim. Penal Code 225, which is the kidnapping for profit or other gain, which is another 10 years per victim. The conspiracy and attempted kidnapping laws, even though the act was not completed, planning and attempting to kidnap is punishable under Japanese law. The likely sentence would be 20 plus years, 10 plus child, for conspiring and attempting to kidnap both Boruto and Kawaki. You also have the conspiracy to murder Boruto, which is attempted murder. This would likely result in life imprisonment. The crime is Jigen planned to kill Boruto by feeding him to the Ten Tails to cultivate a divine tree. The relevant Japanese laws are Penal Code Article 199, which is murder. Since the plan was premeditated, it qualifies as capital punishment or life imprisonment. Penal Code Article 203, which is attempted murder, up to life imprisonment for attempting or planning a murder. Given the gruesome nature of the intended killing, feeding a child to a monster, Japan might treat this as an aggravated crime, strengthening the case for the death penalty. The possession of the Ten Tails, a weapon of mass destruction, is another life imprisonment or death penalty. The crime is that Jigen secretly kept a Ten Tails, a world-ending entity comparable to a nuclear weapon, for his personal use. The relevant Japanese laws are an act of punishment of crimes relating to manufacturing explosives, weapons of mass destruction law, which is life imprisonment for the possession of those weapons that threaten public safety, terrorism prevention law, possessing and planning to use a weapon of mass destruction for control or destruction qualifies as terrorism, which can result in the death penalty. Penal Code Article 77, rebellion against the state. If possessing the Ten Tails is seen as a threat to national security, which obviously it would be, the death penalty can be applied here. Then it gets even worse for Jigen. Look at the additional crimes. Jigen's legal situation under the Japanese legal system becomes worse. He has actions against Naruto Uzumaki, the 7th Hokage. It adds severe charges related to trespassing, kidnapping, assault, kidnapping of a political leader, and attempted murder of a political leader. The illegal entry and home invasion carries up to 3 years. The crime is when Jigen entered into Naruto's home without an invitation, still wearing his shoes, while planning to kidnap Kawaki. The relevant Japanese laws are Penal Code Article 130, which is trespassing and unlawful entry. It carries up to 3 years imprisonment for unlawfully entering someone's home. Attempting to kidnap Kawaki carries another 10-year sentence. Jigen attempted to kidnap Kawaki by forcibly taking him from Naruto's home after Naruto had adopted him as a child. The relevant Japanese laws are Penal Code Article 224, the kidnapping of a minor, which is again up to 10 years per victim. Attempted kidnapping laws increase the sentence due to the intent and use of force. Then you get into the assault and bodily harm against Naruto, which is another 10 years. The crime in question is that Jigen stabbed Naruto with multiple chakra rods, which caused him bodily harm. The relevant Japanese laws will be Penal Code Article 204, causing bodily harm with a deadly weapon, up to 15 years of imprisonment for causing bodily harm with said weapon. Since chakra rods basically function like swords or other stabbing weapons, Jigen's attack would qualify for aggravated assault. So this would likely be 10 to 15 years of aggravated assault. Then you get into the kidnapping of Naruto, who is a political leader, which is, in short, the death penalty. The crime in question is that Jigen forcibly removed Naruto from his home using the Karma Seal and teleported him to another location, effectively kidnapping the Hokage. The relevant Japanese laws are Penal Code Article 225-2, kidnapping a public official for political purposes. That is the death penalty or life imprisonment. If the victim is a political leader, such as the Hokage, akin to a prime minister or a US president, the crime can be treated as a form of terrorism. Under Penal Code Article 77, rebellion against the state, since Jigen's act would be seen as an attack against Konoha's government, he qualifies for capital punishment, which is the death penalty. You also have the attempted murder of Naruto, which is going to be 15 years. When Jigen physically assaulted Naruto when he was in his dimension fighting Naruto and Sasuke, He beat him to the point where Naruto was unconscious for 2 days, and it was an attempt to kill Naruto. The relevant Japanese laws would be Penal Code Article 203, which is attempted murder, which is life imprisonment or up to life imprisonment. Aggravating factors would be Naruto is a public official, Hokage, increasing the severity of the sentencing, which at the bare minimum is going to be 15 years up to life imprisonment for attempting murder of Naruto. Then you get into the attempted murder of Sasuke, which is at a bare minimum 15 years. The crime in question is that Jigen left Sasuke near death during that battle. This would apply under the same laws of what happened with Naruto, Penal Code Article 203. The other aggravating factors that you have is that Sasuke is a national level military asset because he is a Shadow Hokage, he is in possession of a Sharingan, and he is in possession of a Rinnegan, which are basically military assets. That makes this an act of terrorism. So this would be 15 years up to life in prison. Then you get to the sealing away of Naruto by kidnapping and unlawfully imprisoning a political leader. This would lead you to the death penalty of life. The crime in question is, again, Jigen sealed Naruto away into a separate dimension, incapacitating him as Hokage. This would fall under Penal Code Article 225-2, kidnapping a public official for political purposes, which is the death penalty. This would also count as an international crime. The conspiracy to destroy the world by harvesting a chakra fruit, that is also the death penalty. The crime in question was carried out when Jigen planned to feed Boruto to the Ten Tails to grow a chakra fruit, which would result in the end of humanity as all life would be consumed. The relevant Japanese laws would be Penal Code Article 77, rebellion and mass destruction. Death penalty or life imprisonment would apply. Planning to have an event of a global genocide, harvesting all life using a chakra fruit as an end game, that would qualify as a crime against humanity. Japanese law incorporates international human rights laws, which means his actions could either fall under International Criminal Court jurisdiction, where crimes against humanity receive life sentences or execution, and this would be nothing short of a genocide. Then when you add in the trafficking of a minor in an unregistered aircraft across multinational airspace, it further cements Jigen's status as an international criminal under Japanese and global law. Trafficking a minor in an unregistered aircraft against multinational airspace is life imprisonment. The crime in question is that Jigen had Kawaki transported, Kawaki being a minor, in a presumably unregistered aircraft across multiple countries without legal documentation. It violates international aviation and human trafficking laws. The relevant Japanese laws would be the Japanese Penal Code Article 226, human trafficking of a minor, which starts out at 10 years and can go up to life in prison. You also have aviation law violations. So having someone operate an unregistered aircraft violates Japanese Civil Aeronautics Act, which penalizes unauthorized flights, which this is what this is. Even though Victor was controlling it remotely, it is still operating an unregistered aircraft. Entering and exiting into airspace illegally also violates international aviation treaties. The United Nations Protocol to Prevent Human Trafficking, the Palomaro Protocol, if applied, would result in life imprisonment under global law. So the likely sentence here would be life in prison plus an additional 10 years for unauthorized use of airspace and operating a illegal aircraft. Then when you add in the attempted murder of Kashin Koji, it further increases Jigen's criminal record. So the attempted murder of Kashin Koji is starting out at 15 years. Jigen attempted to kill Kashin Koji by using his chakra rods to stab him, and then repeatedly fighting him afterwards. This was a deliberate attack of murder that failed due to Kashin Koji obviously killing Jigen in self-defense. Then you add in the fact that he is using a deadly weapon in the form of chakra rods. The aggravating factor as a use of weapon that is akin to a sword would likely increase the sentencing. So now that we have the total crimes all laid out, using the method we mentioned earlier, where every life sentence and execution sentence would be treated as 81 years in jail, this is how long Jigen would go to jail. It would be a total of 1,994 years in prison, and the total fines would be 12.366 billion yen in Japanese yen, which is akin to $82 million US. Under real-world laws, Jigen ranks among the worst offenders in Japanese history, committing mass human rights violations, child trafficking, world-threatening conspiracy, and multiple attempted murders. What we'll do now for the too long didn't read section is basically list out the crimes, the sentence durations, and the fines in Japanese law. So the crime of child trafficking of 15 children would get him 150 years. This would be 50 million yen per child for a total of 750 million yen. Human experimentation would be 81 years because it's life imprisonment, which would be 1 billion yen. The murder of 13 children would be 1,053 years. That is a 13-time life sentence over 81 years. That would be 1.3 billion yen, which is 100 million per victim. The physical abuse of a child and the emotional abuse of a child in Kawaki, that would be 20 years, which is 10 million yen. Animal cruelty and psychological torture, that is 5 years with 1 million yen. Conspiracy to kidnap Boruto Kawaki is 20 years with 50 million yen. Attempted murder of Boruto is 81 years because it's life imprisonment, which is 500 million yen. The possession of a weapon of mass destruction, the Ten Tails, is 81 years because it's life imprisonment and 1 billion yen. Unlawful entry into Naruto's home is 3 years, which is 5 million yen. Attempted kidnapping of Kawaki is 10 years, which is 50 million yen. Aggravated assault against Naruto is 15 years with 100 million yen. Kidnapping the Hokage is 81 years because it's life imprisonment. That's 1 billion yen. Attempting to murder Naruto is 15 years, which is 500 million yen. Attempting to murder Sasuke is 15 years, which is 500 million yen. Sealing away Naruto, which is kidnapping a political leader, is 81 years because it's life imprisonment, which is 2 billion yen. Conspiracy to destroy the world by harvesting a chakra fruit, 81 years, which is life imprisonment, which is 3 billion yen. Trafficking a minor in an unregistered aircraft across multinational airspace is 91 years, which is 500 million yen. The attempted murder of Kashin Koji is 15 years, which is 100 million years. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Leave your suggestion for future versions of this video with other Naruto characters, and don't forget to subscribe and also check out videos on my Anime Explained channel where I talk about non-Naruto content.